essentially how to introduce you to paper 5, but I mean, I can just speak in general terms that you're going to do it all over again, right? And you're going to find a different topic, and you're going to find, you know, the hard part is to do the critical thinking. Is coming up with the topic, coming up with the reasoning, coming up with the operational definitions and those kind of things, right? I know it would be easy. Let me just warn you ahead of time. I know it would be easy to just take someone else's topic and someone else's research and write your own paper for doing that, right? I'm aware of what you're doing, right? I have copies, electronic. By the way, if you haven't submitted your paper to SafeAssign, do it now, right? Do it today. So make a note of that. Make sure it's up on SafeAssign, right? Because I will be looking at, you know, looking for that. The easy way to catch it is the references page, right? When someone else's references page is exactly like someone else's references page. That's the catch. Do your own work, do your own thinking, find your own research, do what you need to do, right? I'm not expecting you to just find shortcuts to doing this. Look, the hard part is the critical thinking part, the thinking, the sifting through the topics to recognize what might be comparable, and to what I think of the hardest of them all is to really come up with those criteria for evaluation. So take a week's worth of time, just if you're planning this out, right? I mean, because I just want to make sure everybody sees the calendar here, knows where we're going with this. That we are turning the paper in here on the 6th. Let me throw this up so everybody can see it. Today is the 6th. The paper's due December 1st, right? So you essentially have 3.5 weeks to do this, right? And I have no wiggle room on this paper, right? So I know that a lot of people will put off the development of this to the last minute or to the last week or to Thanksgiving break or something like that. And I just want you to know you're playing with fire if you do that, right? You need to let this idea incubate, right? You need to have time to think about things and let things develop, right? I mean, I'm telling you this because I know what you'll try to do, right? You know, oh, I've got 4 days of time in Thanksgiving, I'll just do all my research and everything then, right? It's not going to happen, right? It's not going to. It could happen, but it's not going to be good. That's going to be the problem. So let me just tell you, right? Start the process now, right? And start thinking about things. Start, you know, doing the background reading. Give yourself a week of time to let the whole idea develop as to what you want to do. And I would do something that's in your area of interest, right? I mean, if you're into orthopedics, or if you're into, you know, pediatrics, or whatever area of medicine that you're interested in going with your degree program, you know, whatever you want to work in, just take an interest in that. Start at Cochrane. If I were you, I'd go to Cochrane and look to see what they're doing in Cochrane. Like, check all those subcategories out. Go to Dynamed. Start punching in a bunch of stuff at Dynamed. Start looking at all the things that are available to you, just in terms of general topics, right? Don't worry about the treatment options and those kind of things. Let's just read up on the topic first, right? Get a handle on your subject before you start gathering research and start trying to figure out options. The easy thing about paper 4, if there was anything easy about it, is that you had a process already in place, right? For most of you, you kind of had an idea, you worked through this, you know, across time. And that's what you don't have with paper 5 is time, right? So even though it's 3.5 weeks or the paper is due, it's going to be, you know, you are going to feel crunched because you've got other classes that you're taking and you've got other exams and those kind of things. And as you can see, December 1st, right? I mean, that's right at the, you know, due in the last week of class, or the Friday before the last week of class, right? So I know that there's going to be a lot of other courses and demands, you know, on your time. So let's just keep this planning in the forefront of your brain, right? Give yourself a week of time to develop the topic, do the background reading, figure out what's going on in your field, figure out something that you want to do. And by all means, talk to me about it, right? I'll discuss with you, right, what I think would be reasonable for this level of work, right? I don't want you to go getting into something that's really complicated. I would stay away from all those multifactorial problems that are, neurologically based or brain science based, right? You don't want to be dealing with that stuff because it's really difficult to put tests and measures on those things, right? And you're not going to be neurologists, so stay away from those issues. The other, so I guess the second phase then would be to give yourself a week to then critically evaluate, right, the research treatment options, right? The research-based treatment options. So then you start going to Dynamed, you start looking through Dynamed, you start looking at the different types of possibilities out there, right? So that then you can start developing an operational definition from the reading that you did previously through the treatment options that you're seeing, so you can start to narrow those things down. It's at that point, right, once you've got a pretty good handle on things, that's when you start going and finding the detailed research articles to help you make your decisions about this, right? So I look at it as like a 3-week process of letting the topic incubate, doing the critical thinking, finding the treatment options, developing the operational definition, and then finding the research articles to help you make your case. And again, use everything. Read up on get as much as you can to help you make your argument. Leave yourself that last week for revising and editing, right? I mean, that's what you need to do. Give yourself time to look at that final document. Don't just try to revise and edit in the last day, right? I mean, a lot of times I think what you're finding is that the more you give yourself time to revise, the better the paper will be, because you can rethink certain strategies. You can rethink what you're saying and kind of reorganize, redevelop, explain things better. I mean, it's just the revision and editing process is the most important one, I think, in terms of the final product, getting that polished research paper in on time. And if you just shortchange yourself on that, I mean, it's not going to come in polished, and it's going to look like a mess, all right? So I'm telling you this because I know that a lot of you will be doing, trying to create shortcuts for yourself. There's a little different strategy I want you to apply in this paper, so I just pay attention to what we're going to do with the outline. As you can see, first of all, we're going to spend a couple of days talking about different types of sentences and phrases, and using strategies to vary sentence structure, right? Because one of the things about scientific writing that most everybody complains about is that it's boring, right? What we're going to do is we're going to go right back to this whole issue about the management of information. We're going to talk about brain science stuff again. We're going to start talking about how to position the information in sentences so that you can get an idea how to write and construct sentences that are going to be meaningful and powerful, instead of just fumbling around with a whole bunch of stats and numbers and trying to make sense of it all. So we're going to talk about some management strategies as you're going through this whole process, right? So as you can see, we're going to spend a whole lot of days doing this. And the expectation is that you will be applying these strategies to your paper. In the past, what I did was I made this a requirement so that you would have to, in the past, what I established that there was 5 types of phrases and verbals and 4 types of sentences, and I required you to create those sentences and phrases in your papers, highlight them, identify them, label them, whatever, and I gave you quiz grades on top of that, right? I'm not going to do that this semester, right? Because the papers came in and there were, all these sentences. People were panicking about the sentence structure stuff, and they spent more time on these really insignificant quiz grades and less time on the editing, revising, and critical thinking part of the paper. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to hit you with all sorts of quizzes through this, right, so that we can kind of practice what we're learning in the classroom, and hopefully that will translate into the final paper, right, that you'll be incorporating these strategies into the final paper, right? So instead of making you responsible for them in an artificial way where people just go through and create 2 gerunds and 2 participial phrases and 2 complex sentences and 2 compound complex sentences and all that kind of stuff, Instead of doing that, we're just going to do quizzes consistently across here, okay? So that's one thing that's going to change. But there's an expectation that you're going to manage information appropriately. So I'm going to be looking for papers to be expertly controlled, right, in the final polished product that you're turning in, right? I want to see sentence variation applied. I want to see information managed appropriately. All those things that we're going to be talking about, I want to see it coming out and put into practice, all right? So here's what I'm expecting you to do. Obviously, the introduction, and you can set up major sections of your paper just like you did last time, right? Begin broadly, narrow down to your 2 treatments. Establish your criteria, right? And you might have to do that, and establish your thesis, right? This is what you did already. A is better than B, B is better than A, whatever. Right? We talked about all those things. So an introduction, essentially just like the introduction that you established before. And the review section is going to be essentially the same, right? Where you're going to have subcategories of your criteria, right? So whatever those criteria are here, A, B, and C, they're going to appear here in the subcategories, and you're going to battle it out. Here's the research on A, here's the research on B, and you're going to conclude that A is better than B or something like that, okay? What's going to be different about this paper is the conclusion. The conclusion is going to be a 2-part conclusion. The first part of the conclusion is going to be your summary of your subcategories to reinforce that thesis. So you're going to make your point, summarize your point. But the second, and I would think the most important part of this conclusion, is going to be what we did in paper number 3, which is the projection of future research. That's the part that's going to tell me whether you understand your subject matter or not, right? So you can plow through your argument, plow through the data, right? Synthesize, summarize, correlate, get your argument going. But then when you get to the end of it, you need to be talking on more philosophical terms, right? I'm not asking you to take a study that's faulty and fix it. That's nonsense, right? I'm asking you to reconsider your field. What needs to be done in this field in order to get a better handle on decision making? You've got a dilemma, you've got treatment options. The fact that there are treatment options for your condition indicates that there's an argument, that some people are interested in one treatment, some people are interested in another treatment, and for different reasons. All right? So the issue's not resolved. You need to try to explain where we need to go in research in order to try and resolve this dilemma. So it's that second phase of the conclusion that's going to be kind of a really fulfilling explanation that you understand your subject matter really well. You understand the research so well that you know where the gaps are. You know what needs to be changed or what needs to be addressed. One other way to think about this is ask yourself this. What don't we know? That might be a question you ask yourself, right? Because you're going to spend this whole paper telling me what we know, right, and what it means. But to tell me what we don't know, that shows me that you understand your subject matter. Where do we need to go with research? That should help get a better handle on the subject matter. All right? So if you think about it, you're doing all this great research, all this great thinking, you're going to be writing unified and coherent essay, you're going to be developing your sentences that are grammatically correct, but you're also going to be managing them like a professional, where you're moving subjects and verbs around and you're making those verbs powerful, and you're controlling that subject matter, and you're using language that's elevated and associated with your profession, and that you're able to use the AMA and you're able to cite your information and write these research papers, you will be well prepared by the end of this paper. Show me that you can do it all. Questions? at any point in time, if you want to bring up topics starting Wednesday, let's start talking about them in class, right? You start coming up with issue you want to address, I mean, bring it up in class. We'll bring up some websites or whatever you're looking at or databases, and we'll start checking out what you're seeing, and we'll start figuring some things out. If you want to do that, great. If you don't come in with any questions, I'm just going to go right to this management of information strategies, and we're going to spend a whole lot of time working sentences. You know what you need to do. Okay? Start now. Right? Don't let this waste. Right? Don't let that time get away from you. Right? And don't think you're going to do it over Thanksgiving break. This doesn't happen. Okay. Well, if that's the case, then let's spend the rest of the class time